Kia ora everyone, and welcome to today's Q&A session with Aimee O'Keeffe from Ōhope Top 10 Holiday Park. Today we're discussing how to build cultural competency within the business. As outlined in the Better Work Action Plan, the tourism industry plays an important role in sharing Aotearoa's unique cultural stories and history with visitors from all over the world. The aim of improving cultural competency is to enable organisations to tell authentic stories and to build a workplace culture for workers where their cultural values are understood and respected. Workers who are better connected with their workplaces, both from a cultural and purpose perspective, are more likely to thrive, remain longer in the workplace, and become more attractive to future employers because of their valuable cultural skill set. So now to begin, Aimee will speak about their journey to building cultural competency within her workplace. And then we've got a few questions that have been submitted by the participants, and then we can open up the floor to anyone that might have some questions for her. Thanks, Aimee.
Just unmuting myself. You can hear me all right? Lovely. Kia ora everyone. Thank you so much, firstly, for To Go With Tourism for allowing me the opportunity to come on and share the journey that myself and my family have been on to build cultural competence within our business. It's a journey that we're still in the middle of, and I don't think we will ever finish it. It'll be an ongoing relationship that we build and work on as we grow our business. So I'm just going to give you a brief kind of overview of what we've done so far, and then I'll finish off with some top tips. So for those who may not be familiar with our holiday park, we're a 23-acre park in Ōhope, in the mostly sunny Bay of Plenty. The park's been running for over 40 years and sits on land that has a shared lease. So part of the park is owned by a individual family, and the other half is held by our local iwi, Ngāti Awa. We're a really popular holiday park with a primary pool of domestic visitors. We have families who come back year after year, bringing their children and then their grandchildren and sometimes even their great-great-grandchildren. So really sort of family-based and kind of a keystone to our local community as well. And to give you a small bit of background on me and my family have been in the holiday park industry for the last 28 years. When I was 5, my parents, Ian and Vicky Smith, bought a holiday park in Ōhope Beach. And a couple of years later, they purchased a second park down the road. And in November 2020, they sold up those parks, thought they were retiring. I had other news for them. And we purchased Ōhope Beach Top 10 in March 2021. So when we took over the park, we had an understanding that the lease was held by Ngāti Awa, and we realised that we would need a connection and a relationship with them to allow us to run the business smoothly, be able to do the developments on the parks that we wished, and kind of have, you know, a back and forth in a business sense. As a family, we wanted something a little bit deeper than just that leasee-leaseor relationship, and we wanted a relationship that would be beneficial both for the iwi and ourselves as the business, and then also the local community that we live in. So to that end, my dad Ian, he reached out through a local tourism connection that he had to a member of Ngāti Hopuku, which is the hapu that holds the mana whenua of the land that the park sits in. So it's sort of a sub-tribe of the wider Ngāti iwi Ngāti Awa, sorry, where our actual park sits. So it's kind of different tribes own different areas of the beach. So we went sort of directly to them to start building this relationship, introducing ourselves and getting to know a little bit more about them. So we originally met with a guy named William Stewart, who was part of the marketing branch of Ngāti Hopoko, and we introduced ourselves, our family, our goals and our aspirations for both the park and the relationship that we were looking to build with them. So from here, we had several discussions, sort of back and forth meetings to outline the plan collaboratively, what we both sides wanted, and then from those discussions we formed a document that outlined 4 pillars that we wish to work towards. The 4 pillars were social, cultural, environmental and economic, and in each of those areas there were kind of outcomes that we highlighted for both parties, what we wished, and then sort of overarching goals, or like real physical things that we could actually put in place. So I'll give you a few examples to help you understand. So for example, social was around the training and employment of tangata whenua, making sure that we sort of gave priority to Ngāti Awa. The cultural area was integrating Ngāti Awa design features into our branding. I'll show you an example of this later on in my talk so that you can really sort of see how we've put it in place. Environmental was all around getting ourselves involved in the Ngāti Awa sort of environmental regeneration projects. We're obviously a coastal holiday park, so have dunes that we need to look after. We've got a bit of a bunny problem, so like working with the local organisation Halo, and then finally the economic outcomes, which were around both supporting the park, which obviously naturally supports Ngāti Awa, but also helping them with providing a customer base for any new businesses or economic ideas that they come up with. So those are the four pillars that we're working towards. Once they were agreed and put in place, rather than us just running with them and deciding that that was what we were going to do, Ian took the time to go and meet with the kaumātua, making sure that the plan kind of was happy across the board, rather than just in the small boardroom that we were meeting on it about. So it was given its approval, and then it was the time for it to become a living document with both parties working together to reach the goals. And it was at that point in time, I suppose, that it was on our side to really show that we lived up to what we said we were going to do. We walked the walk rather than just talking the talk. And from the discussions that we've had, and particularly what we're having lately with the commercial arm of Ngāti Awa around our development plans, something that they've highlighted as an area of concern for them when they're going into these relationships, particularly with Pākehā owners, is that it can be a sort of a tick box activity. So people come and they say, I really want to do X, Y, and Z with the iwi. They get it all in place. They, tick the box, and then they never hear from them again. So what we are really trying to prove and show at the moment is that that's not what we're about. We really want this to be something long term, and a real authentic, proper relationship, rather than something that we're just doing because we have to, or for a non-authentic reason. So once all of that was put in place and we started working towards it, obviously there were some changes that were needed within our business. The business being 40 years plus, had things that were set in stone that had been, done that way for many, many years. And none of this change can happen overnight. So it is a slow sort of ongoing process that we're still working on. I believe that any of that kind of change needs to be led from the front. So I always try and act in a way that, models what I'm looking for. I have the responsibility of putting in place the policies and the procedures that I wish for the business to have. So that's kind of a work in progress at the moment. I'm finalising our hiring procedures to make sure that there's KPIs around preference for Ngāti Awa employees. We're also looking at development and what we're building and making sure that we kind of respect the iwi's wants around, protection of the land and that kind of stuff in our policies and development. So those things are a little bit more tricky and don't happen as quickly as some of the smaller things. We have made a number of small changes that I feel were taken on really well by our team and kind of made a difference overnight. So the correct spelling and pronunciation of Ōhope is one of the things. People often miss the macron above the O, so making sure that that's something that we practice. Greeting our guests in te reo, just a couple of examples. So those are things that were quickly and relatively easily put into place, and I've seen some real positive outcomes, both from how the staff feel in the workplace to how the guests are feeling when they come into the park. So just to revert back to the 4 pillars, I wanted to kind of highlight a few examples of what we've put in place and how we've seen some positive outcomes from that. Staffing wise, over our peak summer period, we had the opportunity to work with the Ngāti Awa workforce development team to outsource 2 areas of the park that in previous years I'd struggled with getting staff. So that was our cafe and our security team. So they went to their workforce team, said that these 2 contracts, and then put it out to tangata whenua to see who wanted to apply for it. The reason that I'm particularly so delighted that we got to do that is that both of the businesses that we eventually met and had a contract with were exceptional. They were way above and beyond my expectations and the previous experience that we'd had with our own staff, and then also with nationwide security companies, which weren't so good. So yeah, that really showed to me that there's some pride and mana around the work that they're doing, and it just showed the benefit. Going kind of on from that is the staff from Ngāti Awa that we've had in-house. Again, the calibre of the Ngāti Awa staff that we've hired and taken on has, for the most part, been excellent. And I think kind of the main difference that I find is their passion and their love for the local area. So I believe in sort of the power of storytelling in tourism and hospitality, and that if you have a real love and passion for the product that you're selling or you're talking about, it really leads into some genuine storytelling, and the guests know that you actually have a value for what you're talking about. A final example of sort of the 4 pillars that I'd like to show you is the designs that we've been able to work collaboratively with Ngāti Awa on. So we went through a process of working with a a local carver and travel elder to create 4 designs for the park that represent the land, the people, and sort of the cultural and spiritual significance of the environment. So I'm just going to pause and share my screen so that you can have a look at some of these. So bear with me a second. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, lovely. Okay, so what you can see on the screen here is kind of 4 of the designs that we've made into trophies. So we worked with the carver to initially make the designs, and then he carved these onto trophies that we have for different events in the park. So Sandcastle, the trike race, I can't read the other 2, Talent Quest and Mini Golf, I think, from memory. So they're sort of displayed in our reception and handed out yearly. We've also put together a brochure that outlines sort of the significance of the design to the iwi, and gives a little bit more information for our guests so that they can kind of understand the story behind the designs as well. And then we've been able to take those designs and put them into some of our park signage, so that it's kind of, you know, the message that we're verbally giving is also displayed visually. Can you see me again? I'm back. Lovely. So yeah, those are kind of how we've put into place the, you know, the cultural element currently. And as I said, the journey is not finished. It's an ongoing process. So that's the end of the spiel. I will give my top tips, unless there's any questions at this point that you'd like to go through. No. Lovely. So if you are wanting to begin the journey, I'd say go for it. I was asked to give a couple of top tips, so I will just quickly run through them. So firstly, I would say just give it a go, reach out and start building the connections. As Pākehā, I was initially a bit nervous around it. I wanted to be respectful to the culture, was also still being sort of true to myself. But I think my point number 2 would help that, which is to be authentic and kind of true to your word. So if you're coming from a place of authenticity and you're actually doing it, building the relationship because you want to, rather than, as I mentioned, the sort of tick box exercise, then, you know, the feeling of that authenticity will come through and will show that you are true to what you're saying. We can all think of possibly a time where we've met with somebody that hasn't been authentic and how that's kind of made you feel, and no relationship can be built on that foundation. And then finally, I would say go with an open mind, be willing to listen, take the relationship at a pace that is comfortable for everyone, and over and above everything, sorry, that's my mum's phone, be respectful was my number 1 tip, I would say. So that is me. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll pass back.
Thank you so much, Aimee. I really appreciate that. If anyone does have any questions, please feel free to add it into the chat, and I can read them out when you're ready. I do have a few questions here for you, Aimee. So it'd be really great to understand how long it took for your business to see those mutually beneficial outcomes from perhaps the first time you met or Ian met them to potentially, pulling forward your first outcome or implementing an outcome.
So we took over the park just over 2 years ago. I think I started seeing some like real noticeable progress coming into summer of this year. So a year and a half Yeah, I'd say a year and a half. And the reason for that was that there was a lot of kind of, before we put anything in practice in the actual business, there was a lot of discussions that were happening, and also a lot of learning on our side about the park in general. So, it was maybe for the first year a time for us to be like, what are we actually doing here? And then we were able to really put things in place.
Perfect. And so in hindsight, would you do anything differently?
Yes, I'd say something that I probably would have changed if I could was to have brought our staff on the journey from kind of earlier. So there was a lot of behind the scenes work that we were doing, building the connections without kind of sharing it with our staff and talking about, hey, this is what's happening. This is kind of where we're going. So when we'd made the decision, we then went to staff and said kind of like, these are the pillars that we've put in place. This is what we're working towards. And if we had brought them on the journey from the beginning, I think that the time that it would have taken to see outcomes would have been a bit quicker, possibly.
Okay, interesting. And so when you hire members of Ngāti Awa, do you do anything different to make sure that they thrive in your environment? And if so, what do you do?
That is a good question. And no, I don't think we really do. Maybe something that we need to consider. But at this point in time, kind of our onboarding is quite, it's one-to-one. So we are, our team leaders are working individually with people to, meet their own individual needs. So we don't do anything in particular that is over and above, but maybe something for us to consider.
And we just have a question here from Helen. So for the designs, did the carving come first and then the graphic designs followed, inspired by the carvings, or was it the other way around?
So it was a bit of both. So on paper, sort of creation of the designs that then went into the carvings that were then finalized by a graphic designer and went into, print and were put around the place.
Beautiful, thank you. Have you had a staff member that was resistant to building their own cultural competency? And how did you manage this? And why do you think there was resistance?
Yes, I can think of two instances where we did have a bit of resistance. And I think it came from their own personal biases. And the people that I'm thinking of were kind of historic employees that were, there was a lot of change happening in their time. So I don't think it was just, what we were doing. But I would say if I was to, thankfully, like they retired, so I didn't end up having to do anything, because the time that we started things kind of all, it all happened at once, that we were starting and they were retiring for different reasons. But if I had that kind of situation going forward, I think I would just discuss with them, why we're doing it, and show them a bit of the reasons behind our thinking, which hopefully would, show them the value of what we're doing. You can't change people's minds, and if they weren't willing to go down that track, you'd have to manage as any manager needs to. But going forward, I'd hope that we wouldn't have that situation, because when people come into an interview, our values are something that we talk about from kind of the outset. So I would expect that people coming in would have an understanding that culture is important to us, whether that's Māori culture or my husband's Irish. So, your own culture that you're bringing to the business is valued and accepted. So I would hope that going forward, we wouldn't kind of have that situation. Sorry, that was very wordy. I hope it answered your question.
It did, thank you. And lastly, I guess, how did you start? So you mentioned that you guys starting to use Te Reo on a daily basis. So how did you begin that? Did you have a staff member that was willing to, I guess, share and to teach, or did you use an online provider? Or yeah, just some top tips from that would be great.
I think it's probably both. So we do have a couple of really proud staff members who want to share their language, and that was, I suppose, the thing that sparked it. And then from there, it's now a case of I and everyone else need to continue building our own knowledge so that we, it's easy to say kia ora, but every sort of, the deeper you go, it's now our responsibility to take that up, helped by our wonderful staff.
Great. I think we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. Does anyone have any questions? You can just pop on your mic and ask Aimee. No?
Hi, Aimee. I've got a quick one. Of those four kind of challenges or approaches that you took, which one did you find the easiest, and which one did you struggle with the most?
The easiest would have been, I suppose, the staff. So bringing in local people for the jobs that are Ngāti Awa probably was the easiest. The hardest is definitely the economic and getting the balance right between supporting the iwi's outcomes and goals and supporting our outcomes and goals, and kind of the balance between that and keeping the relationship positive without everyone knows money, and can be a bit of a difficult discussion at times.
Awesome, thanks.
Any other questions at all? No? Okay, I'm hoping that you guys can see my screen with our contact details. Is that right, Aimee?
No, you can see my face. Terrible.
Classic fail. There we go. Let me just bring that up. There we go. Does that come up?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Yeah. So Aimee has kindly said that if anyone does have any further questions, feel free to email her. So email address is there, amy@ōhopebeach.co.nz. If you have any questions for myself, feel free to give me an email as well, laura@gowithtourism.co.nz. We have recorded this session, so we'll send a copy of the link to everyone. And yeah, I really wish the best on everyone's journey towards cultural competency. So thank you so much, Aimee. We really appreciate it.